Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webcast about innovation and student equity. My name is Petros Manassi. I'm the Senior Director for Pre-Health Programs at Kaplan, and I first wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and to thank Inside Higher Ed for facilitating today's webcast. I'm very excited to introduce Brittany Wampler, who's the Director of Career Development and Exploration at Cleveland State University, along with Kim Canning, who's our Vice President for University Partnerships at Kaplan, who are going to have a great discussion about all the things related to leveling the playing field for students and specific to the experience that Cleveland State has had over the last couple of months and years with our programs. I'll be moderating the chat and bringing questions to our panelists kind of as we go. So feel free to put those questions and your thoughts into that chat as we move forward. So without further ado, Brittany and Kim, I will pass it along to you.
Thanks so much, Petros. I would really like to thank everybody for spending an hour of your time. We're really excited to share with all of you. And in that vein, we want to really use this time as more of a conversation. So as Petros mentioned, please post your questions in the chat and we'll be sure to incorporate it in as part of our conversation today. So before we dig in, I would like to give everybody an overview of when we talk about all access, what that means. As you all know, standardized exams, such as the MCAT or LSAT, are a required component of the application process to professional and graduate school. Yet many students, especially those from historically excluded groups, often don't have the resources to show their maximum potential on these exams. The cost of test prep and even earning credentials can become yet another cost of college that students and families have to find resources to address. And this can add up significantly, especially when students are faced with paying retail prices. Kaplan's goal for all access is to level the playing field around access to these types of resources. So today, we get to focus on Cleveland State University. In the spring of 2022, Cleveland State University became the first state school to adopt Kaplan's All Access program, which provides all CSU students with access to a defined list of test prep, licensure, and credentialing programs. The school ultimately decided to adopt All Access because of its passionate belief in eliminating obstacles for all students on their path to success. My colleague and friend today, Brittany Wampler, who's joining us, and has been a partner both of Kaplan and me for almost 10 years. So I'm excited to dig in with her on the how and why of CSU adopting All Access. And what we want to cover today is the mindset that it takes to prioritize the importance of knocking down obstacles for students, CSU's decision to adopt All Access, the different ways that CSU is implementing All Access across its school. And then I know Brittany has fielded a lot of questions from various schools around how CSU has funded this model. And then we'll get kind of an exciting sneak peek into some initial data collection that I think is, and I mean, obviously Brittany does too. She sent me a super excited email when she first got this, but some data collection that really highlights the success of this program in the first 6 months that we've worked together. So Brittany, I'd love if you could spend a couple minutes just talking about who you are, your experiences, career path, and how we kind of got where we are today.
Great. Well, before I jump in and get started, I do just want to thank Inside Higher Ed, Kaplan, for the opportunity to shine a short spotlight on Cleveland State University today. We are a public urban serving institution in the heart of Cleveland, Ohio, tropical Cleveland, Ohio, if you will. And it is a privilege for me to be here today. So I just wanted to share that gratitude for even inviting us to be a part of this. I'll walk you back a little bit in terms of my history with Kaplan, as well as my history in terms of working in higher education. I'm a very proud graduate of Kent State University and their higher education administration program. And I have really, for the course of my career and my own college degrees, really been only in public higher education. I graduated with degrees from Clarion University, Western Pennsylvania, came over to Kent State, and have kind of traversed the state of Ohio in terms of its public higher education. So my heart and my mission within education is really serving the student who's going to go to a public serving institution. And I've spent the past almost decade at Cleveland State. When I say that I resonate with the mission, my career mission resonates with everything that we're doing. And I am really proud to work here and to have built a career here where I have now been able to be a part of making decisions that impact every student potentially within our university system. So to walk back, for 8.5 years, I worked in pre-professional health programs, first as coordinator and then as director. And about 18 months ago, I jumped over to the Career Development and Exploration Office to serve as director. And in that move, I also brought along with me pre-professional health programs. So we were able to create one office on campus that supports students' career dreams, whether that's tracking toward the workforce or toward professional, graduate, or law school. And so I think really over the past 18 months, I've been able to dream and do in a way that I've not been able to before. And had those pieces not all come together and I not had administrative support from my VP and on up through the provost and president of the institution, I don't know where we would be, but they keep saying yes. And I am an ideas person and I keep pushing the envelope for ideas. And, you know, today's the second day of Black History Month, and I think we went to a breakfast a couple of weeks ago, and it was all about honoring MLK Jr., but more so about a phrase that he said, which was, "The time is now and the time is right." And I feel very passionate that the work that Kaplan is doing and the work that CSU is doing is in alignment, because the time is now to uplift and help our students who experience financial barriers to achieve their dreams. And that's exactly what we have been able to do in the short time since we were the first public institution to sign on to the All Access program.
So Brittany, one thing that struck me in a previous conversation that we had was, and I don't know if it was just a moment that you had, or it was probably over a lot of moments, but just this idea that that you feel so passionate about, you know, whether the obstacle is test prep or other resources, that your job is to knock them down and to help propel the students forward. Every time you've talked about this, it's really struck me. And I'd love for you to just talk about that a little bit more, because I think that that's, you know, your president, they keep coming to you and saying yes, because I think you have such a centered focus on what you're trying to accomplish. And I think that that's so meaningful. So.
Yeah, thanks for asking. And, you know, to those of you that are here, thanks for being here. We can't see you, but when we were talking about how we wanted this conversation to feel, we wanted to invite you into our living room. And so that's what we are hoping is the level of conversation today. And so I really would encourage you, if you have questions that you'd like to throw up there, please do. We want to feel and want you to feel like you're in conversation with us today. So, you know, looking back over 15 years of working within higher education, I have learned and grown as an individual recognizing the privilege I have in the world as an individual, help understanding the barriers that students face in their trajectory toward higher education, towards graduating from high school, getting into college, getting through college. And I really think that as a part of my own learning and growth, it has been one decision after another to get to where we are today. So a great example of this is when I started as coordinator for pre-professional health programs, I was an office of one at Cleveland State. And here I was.
Office of one with you many times, right?
Right.
Office of one.
And I know so many other pre-professional advisors across the country are exactly in that situation. And I've talked to other advisors that are just starting in the last few years or in the last year potentially in their role. And, you know, I didn't track acceptance data, for example. And then I realized nobody else was. So, okay, so I'll do that. I didn't necessarily have a list of individuals that I could call upon to help my students in need who needed shadowing, research, volunteer opportunities, job opportunities. We do now. And it's not just the financial barriers, but those are very much in existence for us too. But creating a coaching model that supports students and what they need every step of the way. So, you know, if a first generation college student who is working in a non-healthcare related field but wants to go to medical school, my role is to help connect them to a healthcare related position where they can learn the skills and professional development opportunities that will help them. If it is a volunteer opportunity, we have robust opportunities each semester within our office to connect students to. But then it was financial. Then I realized, and it's like each layer that kind of came up, I realized that I could have a role in this. And so we started fundraising. And at the time I was in an academic college and worked for a dean who very much understood and supported what I was going for. We started fundraising through small foundation donations and then a small giving day drive annually. Luckily now we average raising about $25,000 a year toward that pre-professional student fund. And in the past, we've used it for Kaplan scholarships as one way to help students. And so at its peak, we did 18 scholarships. And I was so proud to be able to do that, to provide 18 students a scholarship for the MCAT or GRE or DAT. And then we also pay for any financial barrier that a student may experience. Interview attire, we have paid to send students on interviews. We pay for test registration when a student can't afford beyond what the financial award process is. We pay for applications. So we've set aside money the past 2 years to pay for students to even go through the application process and submit their primary applications. And to get a student across the finish line and get them accepted, we know the role that we play in that. And so I think that the message is, you know, we're all doing the next right thing. And the next right thing last spring, when I had the opportunity, was getting free test preparation for every single CSU student. And the level of need at CSU certainly demonstrates that this was the right decision. If we look at our students who come in with Pell Grants, or our students who are first generation college students or first generation American students, our students that grew up in poverty or are currently in poverty, and we can help to lessen the burden that they have to achieve their biggest dream that they have for themselves. And this is one additional step that we've been able to take to do just that.
Yeah, and I think so part of the reason I wanted you to talk a little bit more about all the different pieces that you do is test prep isn't the solution to everything. It's really a piece of the bigger puzzle for students. But again, I think you've identified this as a real important piece. And all access can help you, again, knock that obstacle away for students, which is amazing. So maybe can you talk about, James and I talked to you about all access and what that could do for your school. Maybe describe, because I think there was a question around advice of, how do you approach provosts and your deans and chancellors with this kind of crazy idea of access in this way? How did you approach that conversation, and what do you think helped pave the way to the yes?
That's a great question. So let me start, and this is very vulnerable. I am an ideas person, and I don't always necessarily know what I'm taking on, but so I think the yes is the number one step, and it's then the figuring out of the process of the project that we just are going to move forward in. And I think wherever we can, we talk about our ideas. So for me, moving into this new role, I had a new supervisor who was a vice president. There, in the last 18 months as well, we have a new president and a new provost. And so we are all in new positions. And so I had a good chance to talk about some of the dreams that I had for this office when I interviewed. This did not come up then, so I was already in the role. But I think when we look at higher education today, and very specifically public higher education, our role is shifting. The role that we play in terms of preparing our students to enter the workforce in the industries that are in need is shifting. The responsibility that we have to help our students, and I think the level of responsibility we should feel as institutions to graduate every one of our students that starts, but not even, I want every student when they graduate to walk across the stage knowing where they're headed next. And that could be where their first paycheck is coming from, or that could be getting that yes to get into graduate school when they apply. But that's what I want for every single student. And so if I am aiming toward that goal, and I know that probably 20 to 30% of students do dream of heading to some type of further education beyond a bachelor's degree, this program will help 20 to 30% of those students. And, I think not every program across the country requires standardized testing still. And we're also providing testing for our School of Nursing students to take the NCLEX, and we're providing fundamentals of engineering for particularly and importantly for our mechanical and civil engineering, but it crosses beyond that as well. But to take the fundamentals of engineering licensure test, which could help them should they choose in the future to become professionally licensed engineers. So it's not just the graduation or graduate school, professional school, law school exams, but it does go beyond that too. So the impact is huge. So the other piece is, how can someone say no when you're making a choice that leans into the mission and the work of the institution? And for public higher education, the mission and the work of the institution is graduation, retention, entry into the workforce, helping students make their dreams come true. How does someone say no to that? And when we seek to serve, it was an automatic yes. It was more so just let's figure it out, not I don't think anybody said no. But the financing, and I know we're going to talk about that, but financing something like this, I think there are a lot of different ways to go about it. And what worked at CSU wouldn't necessarily work at every institution.
Well, and so maybe we can just pause for a minute on this, because we previously had worked together around pre-health more specifically, right? And as we were talking about all access, Kaplan has had a change in products that I get to talk to you about, and resources that are more available, so that we could do not just what people tend to think about Kaplan for, which is MCAT, LSAT, maybe GRE, but we could think about engineering, nursing, and I think that was, in our conversations, those were great ideas, but we weren't sure that the schools would actually be, that the engineering school would be excited about that, and they have been, and nursing has embraced that, taking test prep for the NCLEX. And so I think it's an interesting, we started one way 10 years ago, and kind of the full picture really opened up this past year. I know there was a question about the different types of licensure and credentialing programs. So we have, the way we work with schools is different for each school in terms of all access. So for Brittany and Cleveland State, we defined a specific product list that made sense at the time. I think we're starting to talk about the next iteration of including additional products and potentially additional students. We actually just signed on Howard University as a partner. Their prep includes not just undergrad students for test prep, but also bar for their law students, USMLE prep for their med students, dental prep for NDB for their dental students. So we can look across the resources, and again, I hope this is answering the question, but looking across the resources that Kaplan has and figure out what makes most sense to each individual school, which is, I think, when we're talking about getting to a yes, the flexibility of designing a program that meets a school's goals is really important.
Mm-hmm. And so I know there was a question about using institutional funding or foundation or donor funding. I think the easy answer is whatever funding you can get is the best funding to use, because we all know that we're strapped for cash in higher ed. So to make sure that I'm adequately describing this, we do have a donor fund, but that is not what we're utilizing for the Kaplan All Access program. So it's actually having all access now, and doing that has opened the door for us to help students in new and innovative ways with those donor raised dollars. And so we've increased the number of students who are paying for in terms of sending them on interviews in person or interview attire. We've allocated more dollars toward our paying for application fees and covering the cost to pay for registering for exams as well. And so we've been able to be creative and allocate more dollars toward more areas that students have need. Where we use,
I was going to say, not only can you allocate dollars to support in other ways, but your time too, right? It's not all focused on how am I going to get this test prep rolled out, because that's in a different place now. And so it's not only your time, it's not only money, but it's your time and your staff's time on how students are supported in this way. It's not a constant struggle or a battle, I guess.
No, we're not reading scholarship applications anymore and having to tell people no, which is, I'm very grateful for that. So we still do fundraise and source. That funding is incredibly important to our students when needs do arise. We did use institutional dollars. And so at CSU, we have a career fee that is built into our tuition and fee structure. That is the money that we were able to access that students pay toward their career opportunities. And so the alignment truly is 100%. But had that not been the case, I've talked to other institutions over the course of the past several months. I've been lucky to connect on LinkedIn with a lot of institutions, and so my suggestion has always been, well, go to the top first. That's always the right answer. See what that answer looks like. And, I'm not saying to totally not go through the hierarchy of higher education, but when you have a big idea and you see something that you can really make a change in, and you just go to the top first. And so maybe that's not the most sage wisdom or advice, but it is what I do. And if and when that doesn't work, then I think you work within the colleges that would most utilize it. And can you piece together funding from multiple colleges, engineering and business and nursing and the graduate colleges and graduate programs and pre-professional health if you have it, or pre-law if you have it, and how can you find a way to build the pot of money so that this can become a reality? And look, I am not in a VP role. I've been lucky to very slowly over many years build my career from being a first-year advisor to an academic advisor to a coordinator for pre-professional health programs to a director, and now being a director for a larger office. I am, for anyone in this group that is not at that level, it doesn't take being at that level to have a great idea. And I know today we're talking about test prep, but there are so many ways that we can influence and help our students. One of the other initiatives that we launched since I've been in this role is Dress for Success, which is a partnership with Dress for Success International. And they come in and we have an agreed upon price per student, and we fund every single student to get a professional outfit head to toe for free.
That's awesome.
We served in fall 2022, 425 students.
Wow.
In a day and a half of work. And it's amazing that the line is down the hallway, down the stairs, out the door for students to come in and get that free outfit. And we've committed to doing that every single semester that I am here. And it's a wonderful opportunity to show up for our students in a way that's creative, but in a way that prepares them for the future too.
So in the example of All Access or Dress for Success, I think you're aligning to your institutional goals, right? And so somebody asked the question that they're not that this All Access wouldn't necessarily be in their lane. Who should I reach out so I can get the wheels in motion? Who should this person reach out to? I mean, I think it's thinking about like, how does this align? It might feel more comfortable to go to the top if you align it with what your institution is focused on, right? And because everything you're saying, Brittany, I mean, it's like so crystal clear what your objectives are, and that they tie up to how what CSU wants to accomplish for its students. And so I think that, see how that fits in with what your, provosts, chancellors, presidents, what they're talking about. And it feels like that's a lane to a yes, right? That's how we get to align with what the goals are.
Yeah, I don't think mission statements or vision statements are for nothing. And if we are doing work that falls into the mission, then it's more likely to be able to move it forward. So Cleveland State is the #1 school in Ohio and one of the top 150, I think, in the country for social mobility. And what that means is, how do we help students who might be first-generation American or first-generation college students, and how do we move them into careers that pay a livable wage, that are where they can be successful, where they are supported, where they graduate, where they are retained, and where they feel successful. So this Kaplan All Access falls into that bucket of work directly, because it is helping our students most in need to accomplish whatever it is that they're here for. And that too, I think, is important, as a career office, or if I was in student activities, or if I was in academic advising, which I was, our role isn't necessarily to tell a student what to do. We might help them draw up an idea of a graduation plan. We might help them see why leadership opportunities can fit into their professional goals. We might help them understand more about what their goals are, but the real work is meeting them where they're at and helping them with what their dreams are. And so truly, I mean, one student, for example, with All Access has applied for 3 test preparation programs. Okay. I told Kim about that. and that's great. You want to be a dentist and also a lawyer and also a physician. That's super. And so we did need to have a defining the relationship conversation with that student, because we want to support you in what your goals are, but we know that likely the pathway is not all 3 of those careers. And so our job is to meet where they're at and help them with track toward where they're going. But I say all of that because, all of our work in higher ed, whether we are VPs or academic advisors or directing offices, I think the work is meeting our students and helping them achieve and getting them across that finish line, hopefully successfully.
Well, and how you described it, walking across the stage is an important piece of that, but knowing where they're going as they walk off, right? Having that pathway is really important.
Well, doesn't that lean into the whole idea of higher education right now is really in a lot of ways under fire. And I think, whether it's budget issues or the amount that's of increase in terms of inflation of tuition, justifying higher education in part needs to be how we are making sure our students are successful. And a student is going to feel more successful if they get into graduate school or get into law school or have a job upon graduation. There's many people on this call probably know there's a national survey for Assist Nation, and we have a struggle to have our students fill it out. And when they fill it out before graduation, we have a struggle with our percentage of students who are not yet in knowing where their first destination is. And that's just transparency. And I want to see our students reporting more before graduation that we know that they're going to be successful, that they've landed the job, that they've gotten into graduate school, whatever the case may be. And to be able to report out those successes, I think, is that justification of higher education in general, and particularly public higher education.
Do you want to maybe jump into the data? Because I think that's...
I would love to. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it does, right? And it's...
Yeah. So I'll preface all of this by saying I am a diligent data management person now. 2013, Brittany, was not heavily involved in data management. However, I realize, and it's one of those things, peel back those layers of what I needed to do. And so tracking became something, unfortunately for those that I work with as well, that is just inherent in everything that we do. And so we track everything about our applicants, about our students, as much and as often as we possibly can. And so when a student requests access to a Kaplan course, we have a list of optional questions to figure out who those students are that are accessing these support services. So Petros, do you mind throwing up some of that data? And I'd be happy to chat through it as well.
I think this will also, there was a question about, is this a metric for measuring DEI at the institution? I mean, I think there's things that you can track that help identify that, but just to be clear, this is Brittany. Brittany tracks this. This is not Kaplan track. This is Brittany track data, which... Well,
and to be clear, it is tracked by my team.
Brittany and team.
Yes, there's a whole host of people that we have a staff of 3 pre-professional coaches, 2 coaches and our associate director who is really running the show on this. And she she is tracking all of this. She's reviewing every request and following up with every student, and our career specialists for our pre-professional, graduate, and law areas are the ones doing the coaching beyond test prep and helping with applications and helping with timeline, helping with personal statements, essays, when to apply, where to apply. So we are comprehensive in our approach beyond this data as well. So this is as of the beginning of January. So 266 total students have enrolled in courses overall, and that if we looked at the retail cost of the Kaplan courses as they are advertised online, we have saved students or prevented students from paying just over $325,000 in the first 6 months. I will tell you that our spring graduates for our nursing program just registered this past week. So we are now almost at 400 students just this past week of students that have utilized the Kaplan services because of our nursing spring graduates as well. So that's the breakdown, but to look more closely at our students and really who's taking advantage of this, the next slide goes into that in depth. And so these are the optional questions that we ask students when they're filling out the request form. And I am thrilled. I'm thrilled to know that 44% of the students that have registered identify as first-generation college students. I'm thrilled to know that 45% of students have identified as previously or currently being low income. We're serving the people we intend to serve. This aligns with our institution. The number of students that we guess are first generation college or underrepresented minority students, it is all in alignment. We're serving all of our students at CSU via this program. And I think this is why we did it. And this is why these numbers really seek to confirm everything we set out to do.
And when you think about earlier, when you mentioned, I think before you the max number that of MCAT students that you were paying for was 18.
And that's everyone. That was MCAT, DAT.
Oh, that was pre-health.
Everyone.
Yeah, that was pre-health. To then see a number of 266 halfway through the year it really is impactful. And this chart, I think, this is so gratifying. This is exactly what we want to see, right?
Yeah. And I think too, so one of the questions I can see is, are we paying per test or are we paying one license fee? I think it's really important to note this, we pay one fee.
A license fee, yeah.
Correct, for all students. So there's no back and forth. There's no wondering if we are going to run out of money. There is no, after the contract was done, we've never talked about money again. We talked about it in terms of how much we're saving students. And by my estimate, we'll be between $500,000 and $1 million of savings in year one.
Yeah. And so just to be really clear, the license fee is different for each school because we're really trying to personalize this program so that results are mirror the success that CSU had, right? So we define a product list. We look at the number of students. There's other input that we have, but it's meant to be, here's a license fee that allows all of your students access to some type of test prep, licensure prep, or credentialing course. And to Brittany's point, it really has, you can focus on students instead of, wait, did the invoice get paid? Do I have enough budget? Did the budget money get approved? Did I get the grant? How many more grants do I have to apply for? All your students are covered. And it's really powerful, I think. Especially,
well,
again,
that wasn't, we were kind of building it last spring as you were building it. When we were going back and forth, we were talking about whether there should be a cap.
Yeah.
And I remember in a conversation with James, and James, if you're here, shout out to you. I said, I really think it just should be everyone. He was like, okay, let me go back and see. And that really, it was me saying that, and then he came back and said, okay, here we go. And that's what it was. So we truly were building it together, I feel like. And looking back at that conversation now, there's been some learning outcomes. And one of the opportunities I wanted as a part of today is for anyone else. I've learned a lot in this. And my takeaways, of course, are that I feel very passionately, obviously, that this is the way forward for Cleveland State University students. And if we're going to meet the needs of our students, we are going to do so by eliminating the financial barriers that they have. But also, I think it can be so much more. And we are tip of the iceberg in that too. And I'm a little bit excited to go back to the drawing board. Contract negotiations, not fun. Going through legal for every little line of a contract, not my favorite time. However, using a paintbrush and imagining what something could look like that is just even a little bit better for the next year or two or three, that is so much fun. And one of the things that I've realized is, from a marketing standpoint, and while I don't know how this will look, but I fully intend in the next iteration of this contract that it doesn't just start with students who were in classes or graduated in May 2022, that this is available for every single CSU alumni and current student. Because I know that there are alumni that are working in jobs that they probably would not like to be in, or they're working in jobs but dreaming of going to law school to level themselves up. And they might have been out for 4 or 5 years, and they're going to see this article that comes out that says that this is for them too. And in the city of Cleveland, we have a lot of our alumni that end up staying, living, and working in Northeast Ohio and in Cleveland. So it's really just helping the entire city economy. I think it's 90% of our graduates stay, work, and live in Northeast Ohio following graduation. And after 5 or 10 years, I'm butchering this data, but it's like 85%. Mm-hmm. So we are the public serving institution for the city, but then also, how do we get our students reinvested? How do we bring them back for an MBA? How do we bring them back for law school? And how do we get them back into connecting with us as alumni? And I think so that is one piece that I plan to add into this drawing that we're going to be figuring out in the next year. We've talked about how this might impact or be an additional draw for staff or faculty. We have talked about what other test prep might come in. And we do have a law school. Bar prep could be a part of it potentially down the road. But, I like the idea piece and dreaming up what it could look like. And if I can impact a wider net, I'm going to do that. So that is the next iteration of this. And, I do think about, and again, I know we're here to talk about all access, but I do think about and would challenge the people on this call that what are the other financial barriers that your students experience, and how can we address those from a university perspective that allows a safety net for all students to achieve their goals. And I've got a couple other ideas going of how we're going to do that in other majors and in other areas as well.
That's great. I think one thing that you're pointing out, Brittany, and I hope this makes sense to everybody on the call, but we just started rolling all access out. Brittany, CSU was a first partner in spring of 2022. I think we're up to 7 or 8 partners right now with a whole lot of more conversations going on. So there was a question about, at my institution, folks with the money may ask to see data that supports the need for providing such a program. We have the CSU, we can share out the CSU data, this data as a point. We're working with our current partners who are just starting to enroll students as part of their partnership. I'll tell you, we have a partnership with Hampton University that we just signed at the end of December. by the end of January, we had almost 300 students. It's about 275 that they've submitted. And so Hampton is a school that we've partnered with over the years. We've never come close to having being able to support more than 30 or 40 students, I think, maybe a little bit more. But to receive a list of 275 students that we can enroll in test prep now, when the partnership is a month old, that really, to me, speaks to the need, right? And so hopefully over the next couple of months, we'll be able to share more data like this that shows that students need this and that they're utilizing, and the usage shows that. So Brittany, what else do you think we should chat about?
Well, I'd be happy to address some of the questions that are in here. And Petros, feel free to jump in if you want to focus in or hone in on any specifically. So one of the questions is, do you think that this type of initiative could be better leveraged if more institutions could take on digital transformation? And so I think that that's a really interesting question. Thanks, Victoria. I think most students post-COVID have a lot of comfortability with a digital platform for courses. And we have never heard at CSU that they wish more was in person. that I can recall. We have about, in terms of just our programming within our office, about 50% of our programming is done on Zoom still, and then 50% is in person. And I think one day we'll look back and wonder how we did so much in person, right? It is a digital age. So our students have a choice between a self-paced course or, where available, a live online course. And so what that looks like, the live online course is just like any other online lecture. You go to lecture on specific days and times, you hear from a lecturer, you are talking, chatting with a lecturer or other individuals that are helping out with that particular session. You have homework, you have reading, it is an academic course. So my feeling, I guess, on the digital piece is that our students prefer it in a lot of ways now. And certainly for test prep, which is over and above their academic course load, if they're still taking classes and enrolled, this is very much in alignment with what a lot of universities are already doing.
Yes, and to be clear, the self-paced and live online courses that Brittany's referencing, those are not different versions of the courses that we offer, that Kaplan offers retail. These are the same resources. So, and honestly, to your point around flexibility, being able to log in to your computer at 9 o'clock at night and do a Kaplan course on your couch and not have to, both from a student perspective of they're not locked into going on campus at 6 o'clock on a Monday when they're competing with labs or internships or homework or family obligation. I mean, we know from students, they're juggling so many pieces of life. So to have the flexibility to be able to choose the course, the live online course that fits your schedule is really powerful. And as, as an administrator of a program, not having to herd the cats into a classroom, it gives more ownership and I think more flexibility to students to be successful in this piece that is important on that path. So
go ahead, Kim. I was going to say there's also a question in the chat, if you don't mind, giving a brief description of all access, once again, just to have the kind of all-encompassing definition of what it is.
Yeah, so the idea is that we work with an institution, a university, and after discussion, we typically like to have a lot of conversations around this because we want it to fit with a school. We want the usage to be there. We want it to fit the needs of the students. And so we define a product list with a school. And once we define that product list, the fee is a license fee, which then gives access to all the students to that product list. So again, like Brittany said, you're not having to worry about, do you run out of money? How many students took this course versus that course? And what course is more expensive? And what course? All that conversation and worry and work is eliminated. And so again, where we end up having a lot of back and forth with schools is around what are the products that make most sense? Where is the support needed? Brittany, even when we first started talking, I mean, we included NCLEX. We thought there would maybe be, I mean, at one point we thought 20 students, 15 students, and it ended up becoming a really important resource for the nursing school. So really digging into where are the opportunities on campus that we can support licensing, test prep, and or credentialing programs. Once we have that list defined, we can then come up with a price point, a license fee for the school, based on number of students and like I said, we take into account Pell Grants and graduation rates and things like that. So again, we're really trying, I think there was a question about, well, is there an average cost? No. And I think that should make everybody feel really good, because we're really trying to hone in on, to make it fit to each individual partner, both from a product list perspective and a pricing model.
So I will say last call for questions, but in this interim, we've got a few minutes left. And if there are some other questions that come in, great. But I'm going to turn the tables on you, Kim. And why not? I'm going to ask you a few questions, because I think you have this perspective that is more holistic. I am one institution doing this. So how are successful institutions making this work? And in the conversations that you have, what are the biggest barriers that institutions face in deciding yes or no?
So I think from for your first question, how are schools making this work? I think the most important conversation that we have with potential partners is, where will this fit in your school, in your university, right? Like, who's the champion, who's the leader, and then kind of secondarily is functionally, operationally, where does this fit? And sometimes it's really obvious, and sometimes it requires more conversations, and we are able to use your example as a good starting point for schools. But I think that's, figuring out where this can fit into not just a university's goal, and that is clearly important. We spent a lot of time talking about that, but then operationally, where does it work? What was the second part?
So there's another good question. What are the best practices that you've seen from institutions? And then the other question is access via a dashboard to show the progress that students are making.
Yeah, so let's pause on this one, because this is important. So we do provide reporting across the board. So partners can see engagement, how well students are doing on tests. It varies by course. So the MCAT reporting looks different from the GRE reporting, but we want you to be able to track your students' progress if that is an important piece to you. And I'll use you as an example, Brittany, right? So Brittany's goal is to get students into the right course for them. You're not as concerned as tracking how they're doing on their first MCAT test versus their last MCAT test. But your counterpart at the nursing school is really interested in that tracking, and we're able to provide them with that reporting so they can see what the outcomes are from their students, for sure.
So we've got just 2 minutes. So what advice would you offer to someone on this call in terms of next steps? I'm going to answer that question too. So we'll both answer.
I'll answer. I think based on a lot of what, honestly, we've learned together, Brittany, is think about how this fits into your university's goals and what you want to accomplish, what you want your students to accomplish. I have a team of 6 people that are spread across the country that would be more than happy to talk to anybody about what this could look like. They have my team has a lot of relationships across the country and at various institutions. And so can bring, maybe some more direct perspective of neighboring schools, of conversations we've had, of partners that we've worked with. So we are more than happy to play a role in helping identify the need and then what we can do to push partnerships forward. I think that's what where our role is. Our role is to provide information and to help partners answer questions to get the resources that they need. So
lovely. So my advice is, and I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking, that sounds like so much fun. Work in higher education at the end of the day is really fun. It is really, when you get to support students and you know that the work that you're doing is going to make an impact, and the work day in and day out, like instead of, I think that like day-to-day slog of work, when you have an idea or you have a way forward, you have to go after it. And it might not be this, it might be something totally different. But I think that we all in higher ed sometimes, I talked earlier about justifying our existence right now. And I think that's also true. But what else is true about higher ed is it is really fun to inspire students. And whatever the way forward is for you, your institution, your day-to-day, your work, I hope that you can find that and have some fun dreaming up some new ideas.
Dream big for your students, because it's not only helping them find success, but then watching them be successful, right? Like that's the ultimate. So Brittany, how is it overall ready?
What's that?
How is this over already? How did that take an hour?
I know. Well, truly, on behalf of me and my office and Cleveland State, we're grateful for the partnership. We're grateful for this opportunity to talk about how we are leveling the playing field and really leveling up the playing field for our students. And, it really is. It's fun to do this work and to know that we're making a difference. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share that today.
Thank you for sharing. It was really, as usual, really inspiring. And I really appreciate your partnership.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming and have a great rest of your day.